Now we're going to have Michael Badnarik speak to us on the Federal Reserve. Michael Badnarik, we've had him speak before here, but I'll go ahead and give those who haven't been here a little bit of a primer on him. He is a constitutional scholar and the author of Good to be King, which he has back here on the table, as a matter of fact. It's a beginner's guide to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Michael travels across the country teaching his highly acclaimed class on the Constitution to growing numbers of people suddenly interested in life, liberty, and property. He is also available to speak to community groups on a variety of subjects related to private property and individual rights. Michael was the 2004 Libertarian nominee for President of the United States, 2006 Libertarian congressional candidate in Texas, and was elected President of Continental Congress 2009, which met in St. Charles, Illinois, to document government violations of the Constitution. Please welcome Michael Badnarik.
Tonight's presentation is about money and the Federal Reserve. Everybody likes money. How many people have seen the movie A Christmas Carol with Scrooge? You know, the spirits come to him in the middle of the night. Well, this presentation is going to be a little bit like that. Then we're going to talk about the past, we're going to talk about the present, we're going to talk about the future. But there is a significant difference. You know, in the movie, you know, Ebenezer Scrooge wakes up and it was all a dream. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is really great. The difference is that when I'm done with the presentation tonight, you're going to still be awake and it's not a dream. Okay? So there is a request, you know, don't shoot the messenger. I'm here to tell you about the Federal Reserve. I know ahead of time that a lot of you are not going to really like the information. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is my feeling that these are probably the most famous words written by humans. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can go any country in the world, and they've heard about our Declaration of Independence. And this spirit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness kind of pervades just about everything. We all want these three items. But very few people know that the original Declaration of Independence talked about life, liberty, and property. If you've studied John Locke at all, you'll know that John Locke was writing about life, liberty, and property long before the Declaration of Independence was written. We all want property. Property is kind of a universal concept. No place that you go where they have human beings, their private property is not important. Right? And, well, private property is really so cool that we try to gather as much of it as we can. We're all trying to get more and more property. And when you've acquired lots of property, then you've got wealth. Basically, that's the definition of wealth. It means that you have, well, more property than you can use right now. Some people have a 3-car garage where you can only drive one at a time. Okay? But that's kind of a demonstration of your wealth. Now, wealth was first invented when we developed agriculture. Prior to agriculture, we had to chase all the animals around and kill them and build a new campfire every night, and there was no ability to accumulate extra. But it was when we started to do agriculture, you started growing crops, you put the seed in the ground, water it, and, you know, relatively little work, then you can have more than you needed. Certainly more than you can eat in a day. Well, after we created wealth, we also invented barter. Barter is where you trade some of your extra stuff for other stuff that you want. And this is not anything new. I mean, most of us have invented barter in 2nd grade. Mom packs you lunch. You got another peanut butter and jelly sandwich. How many days in a row is this? And so you find a buddy of yours whose mother has been giving him ham and cheese for 2 weeks, and you swap. You're both happy because you get a different kind of sandwich. So barter is, I mean, it's just intrinsic. You know, you have something that, you know, somebody else wants, you can trade. Now, this has gone back so far, I mean, this is way back historic. They've even got Latin for it. Quid pro quo. How many people ever speak Latin? Yeah, probably not. So quid pro quo means this for that. It's a trade. And all of us are familiar with trading, barter. Now, in addition to barter, wealth also invented something else. Barter invented theft. We've got a bear skin and a spear, and I've got a bear skin and a spear. I mean, what's to steal? It wasn't until people accumulated lots and lots of extra crops, you had the silo full of corn, that it made it practical for somebody to come and take what you had worked for. You know, in fact, if they, you know, took a small enough batch of corn, you may not even notice. So, in our society, we generally agree that barter is good and theft is bad. Barter is where we trade, we both get something out of the deal, and theft is when, well, you take something that doesn't belong to you. Right. So, we've done barter, but the purpose of this presentation is to talk about what is money. And most of you here will probably go, well, you know, I've got dollars, I'll show you what money is. Well, yeah, that's like one form of money, but what is money? Money could be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich could purchase one ham and cheese sandwich on a Tuesday if Billy is, you know, at school on time. It could be gold, silver, precious metals. We've been using gold and silver for pre-written history. And humans have only been writing things down for about 4,000 years. We've been using gold and silver for at least 6,000. How about Las Vegas casino chips? Are those money? Well, they could be. I mean, if you go to the cashier with your casino chips, I'm pretty certain they're going to give you Federal Reserve notes in exchange for that, whether you were gambling or not. I mean, you could have found a casino chip on the floor, but they're still going to change it because they don't want to be accused of not honoring that casino chip. I mean, if word got out that, you know, they were not getting money for those casino chips, well, the casino would pretty much lose business. How about a personal IOU? A little sheet of paper, I, Michael Badnarik, owe you $10 for whatever. Well, it depends on who the IOU is from. And it depends on how much the IOU is for. How much are you willing to risk on that particular person's integrity? You're probably not going to take an IOU for $2,000 or $3,000. You want cash on the barrel, right? But an IOU might work. How about Federal Reserve notes? Everybody likes Federal Reserve notes until you finish the end of this presentation, because Federal Reserve notes are what you can spend at the store. You got a big enough pile of those, you can buy just about anything in the United States. You know, most people used to think that the American dollar was good all around the world. Not so much anymore. But it is a Federal Reserve note. It is simply an IOU based on the integrity of the United States currency. Yeah, like I said, you're not going to like the information in this presentation. Many of you won't be able to sleep at night, but I need to, continue here. How about a trunk full of great-grandpappy's Confederate Reserve notes? He worked with, General Lee. I mean, you've got this trunk full of money. What good is that going to do? I mean, you can turn it into a museum someplace, get your name on a little gold plaque, donated by, but right now, Confederate money is, worthless. And certainly monopoly money, none of you would be silly enough to accept monopoly money for something of value. There's an adage, don't take any wooden nickels. Basically, this is the same thing. Don't take something in trade which has no value. So this brings us back to the question, what is money? It's not just Federal Reserve notes. Money is anything that has these three particular characteristics. It can be anything, as long as it is a medium of exchange. Something that you can trade. Okay? And usually it has to be portable in order to do that. Second thing, it has to have a unit of account. You've got to be able to measure how much of it you are trading. Gold and silver is really convenient because we can measure it in ounces. You know, how many ounces, how many pounds, I mean, how much am I getting? Because we're going to basically compare that. And three, it has to have a store of value. It all by itself has to be valuable for something. So if I don't have somebody that will take it, I can somehow use it myself. All right? So those are the things that money is. So we say that money is a medium of exchange. It's this trade unit or a barter unit. And gold, silver, and copper coins have been used for 6,000 years or more. Even before we started putting pen to paper or paintbrush to rock wall, we've been using gold and silver. And there are a number of reasons for that. First of all, metals, these particular metals have intrinsic value. You know, everybody wants gold. Even if they're not sure what they're going to do with it, man, they want the gold. So it has desirability. A lot of it in jewelry, but, you know, for various other things. It is easily minted into uniform sizes and shapes. You can make all of your coins exactly the same size. That way, if I'm giving you an ounce, you can look at it and go, okay, yeah, I recognize that. That's an ounce. And so my ounce of silver is exactly the same as your ounce of silver, and what we can trade, it doesn't really matter which one we get. Now, there are very limited quantities available. You can't just go out and pick gold up off the ground. Now they thought they could during the gold rush, but the truth of the matter is during the 1850s gold rush out in California and the Yukon, I mean, all these people running out there with their picks and axes and shovels, and I mean, they didn't really dig that much gold up out of the ground. It was less than 2 tons of gold. Compared to the gold that's already in circulation, I mean, that's not a huge increase. It cannot be counterfeited. I mean, this is just really incredible. It's either gold or it's not. You know, you see the cartoons where they're always biting on it to see, because gold is malleable. I mean, it has a certain weight. You don't have to be like a genius chemist to figure out whether this is really gold or not. Right? So, you know, you can't be fooled by not really gold. There's only one real disadvantage to gold, silver, and copper, and is that they are very heavy. And they're therefore difficult to carry. So I'm really, you know, a good businessman and I get a big sack of gold. The other problem is that as I'm riding my horse, that bag of gold is chink, 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 chinking on my belt. You know, I get it, you know, close to the edge of the forest, and a bunch of guys hit me over the head and take my gold. So really that's about the only disadvantage to these precious metals. Now, if you want to really know about money, this is an excellent book. It's written by a friend of mine, Kirk McKenzie, and you can purchase it at Silent No More Publications. That's the first reference there on your sheet. He also has a couple of videos on YouTube, which I think they're about 20 minutes apiece. So about an hour's worth of video will really give you an understanding of what money is, what money was. And these diagrams, the next few diagrams, come from Mr. McKenzie's book. We started out, you have a community. Everybody in the community has a different particular job or function. And we talked about barter, where the blacksmith could make horseshoes for the farmer's horse, and then after the farmer comes in with the crop, he can turn over several bushels of corn or product to the blacksmith. But this is going to require the blacksmith and the farmer to have a separate arrangement. Plus, the blacksmith is going to have to wait until harvest time to get paid for the work that he did. And so it's a little bit tedious. But one of the things that happened early on, or usually about Roman day, is they would use salt. Salt was money. Everybody needed salt because there was no refrigeration. How are you going to keep your food from spoiling? Well, you salt it beyond recognition. Because even the stuff that makes it go bad can't live in that. And then before you eat it, you have to soak it in water and get all the salt out. But they used to say, that a Roman soldier was not worth his salt, because the Roman soldiers were paid in a certain amount of salt, and salt was a commodity that everybody needed. But this worked out really well until somebody decided to become a salt merchant. And it's like, well, okay, so this guy is got lots and lots of salt. That, in its terms, makes this guy really, really rich. But this is so far back in history, none of us are familiar with using salt as money. So to bring us up into a little bit more modern time, we can use gold. Most of you have grandparents that remember using gold as money. And, everybody can exchange gold, a certain number of ounces of gold, for whatever your product is. So the farmer, the doctor, the midwife, everybody can use the same units, and they just advertise their services as being valued at a certain number of ounces of gold. But we do, in this system, have a goldsmith. Somebody who has kind of like a special connection with the money. So let's analyze what the goldsmith does. Why would you want a goldsmith in your town? First thing the goldsmith is going to do is you're going to bring your gold to the goldsmith. The goldsmith is going to give you receipts for your gold. Weigh it and say, okay, you've got, 100 ounces of gold. And then the goldsmith is going to do his work. He's going to purify and certify the gold. He's going to get all the, anything that's not gold, we're going to get that out. We're going to certify it. He's going to be the goldsmith, the official stamp of approval, and say, okay, this is 24 karat gold. And then they stamp that gold into uniform coins. It's really hard to go to the market and purchase stuff when you're holding up a big rock of gold, and that's way too much, and it's hard to do your exchange, your barter. So we're going to stamp it into uniform coins so they're all the same size. And then when you come back with your receipt, you give the goldsmith your receipt. The goldsmith is going to give you back your gold in coins minus a couple of coins. So if you brought in 100 ounces of gold, the goldsmith presumably could give you 98 1-ounce coins and keep 2 ounces of gold for all the work that they did, which is really fine. But we still have this problem of gold being heavy. So one of the things that the goldsmith will do is will store your gold. Hold it for you. You have your receipt. You can come in with your receipt anytime you want it. We'll hold on to it. Put it in my big, lockbox case. Nobody will take it. But what this did is people started to use the gold receipts instead of the gold. If I wanted to buy something from you, I could do, don't go away. And I could run across town to the goldsmith and go, give me my gold. And they give me the gold, and I run to you and I hand you the gold. You give me the apple. And then you run back to the goldsmith and go, give me my gold receipt. Well, there's a whole lot of running back and forth. And it's a gold receipt. So I'll just give you the gold receipt. You can keep it. And eventually you could go and exchange the gold receipt for gold. That way you didn't have to carry gold around. Now, let's assume that the goldsmith is in town, and people, various people bring a total of 1,000 ounces of gold to the goldsmith. Naturally, the goldsmith is going to hand out 1,000 receipts. An ounce receipt for every ounce of gold. So everything is all nice and balanced. But the goldsmith noticed that only 100 ounces of gold were ever claimed at any one time. 90% of the gold, people just like sapped it. So, somebody brings in 100 ounces of gold, they sit it on the front counter. Before they can put it into the big chest, somebody else comes and their gold receipts, and that 100 ounces goes out. But 900 ounces of gold sits there in the chest, and we never touch it. Well, unfortunately, there were goldsmiths that were not that reputable. They didn't have a lot of ethics. And so what they did is they printed 9,000 extra receipts. Now, this is purely counterfeit, because the gold receipt supposedly represents an ounce of gold. And if you print 9,000 receipts and there's no gold, then they're fraudulent. But who's going to know? You printed the original receipts. You could print extra receipts. Who the heck's going to know? And so what you have now is people are still, okay, you got 10,000 of these receipts circulating as money. Nobody can tell the good ones from the bad ones. But now, the same thing is true. Human nature, we still only have 10% of those gold receipts redeemed for gold. So when people start bringing in their gold receipts, they only claim 1,000 ounces of gold, which is exactly how much we had. And the problem is, everybody is assuming that there's another 9,000 ounces of gold there. And there ain't. You've been ripped off. And this is what we call a fractional reserve system. Because there's only a fraction of the actual money in the bank. The rest of it is counterfeit. Now, this has been going on for centuries, so it's not like you're the first people to be fooled by this system, but you got to know the system so that you're less fooled. So, let's look at money then and now. We look at the top, okay? This says silver certificate. Now, the Constitution explicitly talks about gold and silver, and so this makes it constitutional money. And if you read underneath this, it says $1 in silver payable to bearer on demand. In other words, you could take your silver certificate, go to the bank, which is now substituting for the goldsmith, silversmith, and you can smack that down on the counter and demand your $1 worth of silver. But you don't have any of these in your wallet or your purse. What you have are Federal Reserve notes. It's an official IOU. All right? It is a note, which is a debt instrument. And notice that there is no payable to bearer in anything. It's just $1. $1 of what? It's basically $1 of Federal Reserve promise. That's what you get. Do those two look quite a bit alike? Would you, if you weren't paying attention, would you accept one and think that it was possibly the other one? Basically, that's the definition of counterfeit. Now, many people have seen silver certificates. How many of you have seen one of these? This is a gold certificate. And it says $10 in gold coin payable to the bearer on demand. These were the gold certificates. You go to the goldsmith, smack down your receipt, and by God, you're going to put gold in my hand. But the date on this, I think, is 1922. Anybody here born 1922 or before? I don't think so. And how many people think it's a shame that we don't have something like this in circulation today? How many people would like to have some kind of a certificate? Well, ta-da, you do. This is a Liberty Dollar certificate, and it is payable, redeemable by bearer on demand. Friend of mine, personal friend of mine, basically created silver money. He was the silversmith. You give him silver, he gives you this ounce of paper, he'll actually sell you the silver for worthless Federal Reserve notes. Okay? Unfortunately, my friend Bernard von Nyhaus was just indicted and convicted by the federal government for counterfeiting. Okay, let me explain it to you, because I know that international and federal law is somehow confusing. The Federal Reserve is insisting that worthless fiat Federal Reserve notes are real money, and that silver, an element on the periodic table, is counterfeit. I can't explain it either. It is completely, it makes Alice's Wonderland seem like a reasonable place to live. All right? But we do have choices other than the worthless Federal Reserve notes. So you remember our system where the goldsmith has got these 9,000 ounces of, counterfeit silver out there, and it's like, well, okay, what is the goldsmith going to do with those 9,000 receipts? Can't just go out and spend it because, well, people would notice that. So goldsmith was devious and said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to distribute these 9,000 receipts as loans. I'm going to loan you the money. I'm going to loan you the money so that you can do something, but naturally, because it's a loan, you're going to have to pay back the loan in gold. Now, wait a minute. There was only 1,000 ounces of gold. Where are you going to get all these 9,000 ounces of new gold? Well, that's kind of your problem, isn't it? All right? And not only, but you're going to have to pay interest. You're going to have to pay interest on 9,000 ounces of gold that never existed. We just make it up. We loan you artificial money, and now you've got to give us stuff back plus interest. Is the goldsmiths have like a really swell deal? I mean, this is a great job if you can pull it off. Now, who are we going to loan money to? Well, you could loan money to individuals, but I mean, what are you going to need to borrow money for? Maybe to build a house? And, how many times in your life are you going to do that? Once, maybe twice, and that's really not that much money. So we can also give loans to corporations. Corporation needs a lot more money. They got to build a manufacturing plant. Well, that's a bigger loan than you're going to ask for. Oh, better yet, we can loan money to the government. We will loan money to the government. The government's going to give us this guarantee. And we can just make huge loans. And naturally, lots and lots of interest. But when is a government most likely to borrow money? When can I walk into the government's office and say, hey, I got money, you want to borrow it? When a government is at war. We don't want to lose the war. Gosh, we don't want to stop being a country. So by God, we are going to borrow as much money as it takes. Because failure is not an option. We are going to go all the way. We are going to win. Because we're the good guys. Which led to the quote, war is the health of the state. Anytime the government is at war, they get really healthy because they're getting all these money, loaned to them. And who's going to pay back the loan? You've seen this presentation before and you jumped ahead? All right. War is the health of the state. Can elaborate. It automatically sets in motion throughout society those irresistible forces for uniformity, for passionate cooperation with the government. Because we're at war. Come on, we're going to band together. And we set up a system coercing into obedience the minority groups and individuals which lack the larger herd sense. What's a herd sense? You guys are Texans? You get all the cows, they all move over into the corner of the, pasture by the, together. They do everything as a group. Okay, don't ever want to be all by yourself. And basically we do that with humans. You go boom, 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 you start beating the war drums, and everybody goes, oh my God, we got to give money to the government, we don't want to lose the war, come on, borrow. And if you're going, whoa, I don't know if this is a good thing, they start to beat you up because you're not on our side. Because you're not asking for war. The state is intimately connected with war, for it is the organization of the collective community when it acts in a political manner, and to act in a political manner towards a rival group has meant, throughout all ages, war. Now, I want to talk a little about the Federal Reserve. The best book to read on the Federal Reserve is Creature from Jekyll Island, written by my other good friend, G. Edward Griffin. It is a thick book. You will not be able to read it without putting it down and just walking around the room to cool off. I guarantee that this book will make you angry. This is the book that turned me from politically interested to passionate. I am going to restore a constitutional republic to this country, and there's no way anybody in Washington can stop me because I read this book. So I highly recommend this book. It'll give you a lot more detail than I can give you tonight. Now, let's go through a real brief history. I'll try to move this right along. 1910, all the bankers, the different banks that were competing with each other, they got on a train in New York, they went to Jekyll Island in Florida, and for 2 weeks at this fancy schmancy hotel, they organized, got together, and it was a conspiracy. They invented the Federal Reserve System. And in 1913, they got the Federal Reserve Act passed. Now, when? When in 1913? Well, that was on December 23rd at 11 p.m. at night. How many people in Congress do you think were in Congress a day and a half before Christmas, late at night? So just the fact that it passed at 11 o'clock at night is a little bit suspicious. But don't go away. It's like, that's not all. You also get the Ginsu knives. We also have the 16th Amendment ratified on February 3rd, and only 3 weeks later, the Internal Revenue Service came into existence. Coincidence? No, I don't think so. Not only did we get the 16th Amendment, we got the 17th Amendment ratified on April 8th, which tricked all of you. Usually the senators were chosen by the state legislature, so there'd be checks and balances between federal power and state power. But the people alive in 1913 were going, oh, heck, we want to vote for senators too. And so now we have a large House of Representatives and a small House of Representatives, and it turned us more into a democracy. Now, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5 of the Constitution specifically says Congress has the power to coin money and regulate the value thereof. Does it say anything in this clause about printing money? No. If I don't have an apple, can I give it to you? Why are you laughing? I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to give you an apple that I don't have. If Congress does not have the power to print money, how does Congress give the power to print money to a private corporation? The answer is they can't. Federal Reserve is completely, totally, 100% unconstitutional. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 says the state shall not coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender of payment in debt. So the states are only allowed to use gold and silver. They're not allowed to use anything else. How many states do you think accept gold and silver to pay taxes? None. which means that also the state governments are in violation of the Constitution. But that's okay. You guys have never read the Constitution. It's just an archaic piece of paper. It's over 200 years old. Who cares what the Constitution actually says? Now, there's actually a Supreme Court decision said the emitting bills, we print bills of credit, means printing paper, or the creation of money by private corporations like the Federal Reserve is expressly forbidden by the Constitution. I mean, the Supreme Court acknowledged it, but apparently we just keep going on like nothing happened, and the Federal Reserve keeps marching along, printing counterfeit money. All right, so let's go back to 1913. We've got the Federal Reserve. We've got war is the health of the state. A government will borrow more money when it is at war. So in 1913, we invent the Federal Reserve, and in 1914, World War I begins. Wasn't that convenient timing? So the government could borrow money from the newly created Federal Reserve Bank. What a great idea. We got so lucky. The war ends in 1918. The war to end all wars. Oh my God, that was so terrible, so awful. We're never going to do that again. And 1920, we have the Roaring 20s. No problem. That's why everybody's drinking champagne. That's why everybody's dancing to Charleston. My God, we think we're getting really rich. Up until the, now the Federal Reserve was invented supposedly to prevent boom and bust cycles. Some years are good years, some years are bad years. Well, we don't want any bad years, so we're going to invent the Federal Reserve. It's going to be like an economic shock absorber. So we're not going to have really, really great years, but we're not going to have any bad years either. It's going to prevent recession. So in 1929, what happens? Stock market crashes, nobody can get their money. All that money that you borrowed from the bank, you still have to pay the bank back. Which is why people are jumping out of windows committing suicide, because they got screwed. They thought they were making all sorts of money out of thin air, and now the piper comes to call, and you don't have the money to pay the bank back, so you have to, sell the farm, and the banks own all the farms. So the Great Depression, and that's got to be an oxymoron, right? How can a depression be great? And this is exactly what the Federal Reserve was supposed to prevent. So we've got the Great Depression finally ends in 1938 with the inclusion of socialism. Franklin Delano Roosevelt gets elected to the White House. We've got the New Deal, basically socialism. The government's job is to take care of the people. You just give us your Social Security money, and when you're ready to retire, you're going to have more money than you know what to do with. Socialism. And you only vote for socialism when you think that you're going to die. So that's how they got socialism in, and everything was good and happy after that. 1939, World War II begins. The United States didn't get involved until 1941, when FDR allowed our sailors to be destroyed at Pearl Harbor, but that was okay. It's because Americans didn't want to get into another war. We were still remembering World War I. But when we had our guys get killed at Pearl Harbor, then we got pissed, and we just get into World War II with a vengeance, so that the United States can borrow more money from the Federal Reserve, because war is the health of the state. So finally, World War II ends in 1945, depending on where your sons and husbands were. Victory in Europe or victory in Japan, different days in the year, but 1945 it's over. Finally we can relax. Oh gosh, the Korean War starts in 1950. So we can borrow more money. But it really wasn't a war because Congress didn't declare the war. It's really just a police action. So clearly that's much better. 1953, the Korean War ends. Now, finally, something good happens. 1954, John and Elaine Badnarik had a baby. Finally, something good happens. But the Badnariks are not the only ones. We got baby boomers coming out of our ears. Well, not technically, but I mean, there are babies all over the place. And, I mean, these baby boomers, we've had all these wars, we've had the Depression, and now we're back from the war. We can get that job down at the Ford Motor Company. We're making money. And so the baby boomers were affluent. Mom, I want a bike. Boom, got it. You know, Timmy's got, boom, you got it. So we were affluent, we've got money, we're trying to forget all the wars, we feel somewhat privileged, we're healthier than Americans have been, and we've got these really great expectations, and everything goes along really well up until, well, 1955, when Vietnam started. Vietnam lasted for 20 years. Why? Because war is the health of the state. If we can keep the war going and going and going, the government can borrow more and more and more money, and you get to pay off all the interest. Who's getting rich during the Vietnam War? Oh, Halliburton. So, fortunately for John and Elaine's little boy, the Vietnam War ended just about the time they were ready to put him in camouflage and send him to Vietnam. So there is some good things to happen to all of this. And then 1991, Desert Storm started in the Persian Gulf. When did we bring our American troops home from the Persian Gulf? When did that end?
March 28th of 99.
It hasn't. So this is 2011. We've just done another war. The war in Iraq has already gone longer than the Vietnam War. Why? Because war is the health of the state. We get to borrow more money, and the people are not going to bitch because, my God, we're at war. We don't want our side to lose. So, Daniel Webster said, of all the contrivances used for cheating the laboring classes of mankind, none has been more effective than that which deludes them with paper money. If I can convince you to take monopoly money, I get all your stuff and you get worthless paper. If I can give you worthless paper like Federal Reserve notes and get you to give me all of your gold and silver, I win. How many people have seen the commercials? Give us your gold. We will give you top dollar for your gold. Why? Are they so concerned about your economic safety that they're going to give you this valuable, worthless paper and you're going to give them your gold?
Broken gold.
I certainly hope none of you have been dumb enough to fall for that. Thomas Jefferson said, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. If the banks foreclose on everybody's land and property, then you will be homeless here in good old USA. And this is my buddy Thomas Jefferson, who, well, he's been dead a while. But they were a lot smarter than we are because they were paying attention. So what is inflation and deflation? Inflation is too much money in the economy. In contrast, deflation is too little money in the economy. One really good way to think about this is the difference between high blood pressure and low blood pressure. You go to your doctor, the doctor will say you should be at 120/80. If your blood pressure is too high, you die. If your blood pressure is too low, you die. That's what happens in the economy. You get too much money or too little money, the economy dies. So, what caused the Great Depression? Oh gosh, it was the stock market crash. No, it wasn't. It wasn't the stock market crash. Did we have this epidemic of laziness? All the men in the United States suddenly went, well, sweetheart, I'm having a vision problem. I just can't see going to work today. Did they all just like stop going to work? No, maybe it was because there was all the work was done. We finished building New York, we finished building all the skyscrapers. Sorry, there's no work left. We have nothing left to build in the United States. Suddenly, all of a sudden in October, there's no work to be done? No. The reason for the Great Depression was a lack of money. On October 29th, the day of the stock market crash, there was enough money in circulation so that each man, woman, and child could have $2,400. So that was the amount of barter units that we had. 1 year later, guess how much money was in circulation in October of 1930? Each man, woman, and child could have $14.25. What kind of barter are you going to do if you don't have any barter units? If you're playing poker and somebody takes the poker chips off the table, what happens to the poker game? I mean, you can shuffle cards, you can stare at each other and tell obscene jokes, but the poker game pretty much comes to an end. And that's how the Federal Reserve caused the Great Depression, by just taking all of our money away. How did they end the Great Depression? After we got the New Deal, then they started printing money, and oh my God, isn't FDR wonderful? He solved the Great Depression. No, it wasn't. Now, inflation is theft. How do you feel about theft? Theft is a good thing or a bad thing? That's a bad thing. Inflation is theft. If you start with 1 million Federal Reserve notes, and just hypothetically imagine for a moment that the only thing that there is to buy or sell are bales of hay. And you got exactly 1 million bales of hay. How much is it going to cost for a bale of hay? Well, arithmetic geniuses, this is $1 for each bale of hay. The paper dollar is meaningless. It's a barter unit. It's just easy to put in your wallet, much easier than a bale of hay. So when you don't want to carry the bales of hay around, you trade the bale of hay for a paper dollar. Then later, when you want the bale of hay, you trade it back. So the cost of a bale of hay is $1. Now, assume overnight the Federal Reserve prints another 1 million Federal Reserve notes. So you wake up at breakfast, there are now 2 million paper dollars. We still have 1 million bales of hay. The cost of your bale of hay is now $2. If you put $100 in your safe last night, you could have purchased 100 bales of hay. And now, without walking past you and your dangerous rifle, without getting into your safe or triggering the alarm, the counterfeiters have just stolen 50% of your buying power. Because, I mean, your $100 only buys half as much as it used to buy. All right? So that's nice hypothetical, Michael, but, I mean, really, how bad is it? All right, let's look at how much inflation we had. 1914, you take $1 from 1914 and hold on to it. If you hold on to that dollar until 1950, it's now going to cost you $2.40 to purchase the same item. So your dollar is now worth 49% of what it used to be worth. And all you did was hold on to it. Okay, 2000, that product now costs you $17.38. Your value, the value of your dollar from 1914 is now 5.75%, less than 6% left. Which means they've ripped you off for 94% of your buying power. 2011, 2116, you only have 4.72% left. Now these are not my numbers. These come from inflationdata.com. It's another reference on your piece of paper. You can go and check this out. Take any 2 years and it'll give you the inflation over that time period. But it's like, okay, Michael, you're just, exaggerating things to prove a point. Okay, how much inflation is possible? How much inflation is possible? How many people know about the Weimar Republic. This is Germany between World War I and World War II. The only thing the German government could do to make money was to print it. They were printing it so fast that if you went to the store, there would be one price in the morning, another price in the afternoon, and a third price in the evening. You think you got inflation problems? Not yet. So let me show you real money from the Weimar Republic. This is ein Milliard. I don't know if you speak German, but that's 1,000,000 marks. That's 1,000,000 marks, and it would barely buy you dinner. But that's not all. We can go up to 100 Milliarden mark. This is 100 million mark note. When was the last time you saw 100 million US dollars? But you could hold it in one piece of paper. One piece of paper was 100 million marks. Oh, I'm not even finished yet. How about 500 million Milliarden marks? This is 500 million. This is 500 million marks in one piece of paper, but let's go all the way to the top and ring the bell. 1 billion marks, which, as it says down here in the corner, is the same as 1,000 million marks. In a single note. German government's promising to pay that. So, yes, we can have some really serious inflation. Here's a quote from Dr. Friedrich Kessler, who lived through all of this, said it was horrible, horrible. Like lightning it struck. No one was prepared. You cannot imagine the rapidity with which the whole thing happened. The shelves in the grocery store were empty. Okay? You could buy nothing with your paper money. And what's the worst part about this? No one was prepared. Would you like to be prepared? So, let's look at our recent economic history here in the United States. 2007, the Congress came up with this really wonderful scheme of $700 billion for a bailout. Who's got to pay that $700 billion? You do. They print it and give it away to all the corporations, and then you get to pay that back with interest. But you are good, patriotic Americans, and I'm sure that you would never not pay your taxes so the government could finish up this debt. But even before this whole thing was over, in 2008, it is already over $1 trillion. And Americans were upset. What were they upset about? For the $1 million bonuses. $1 trillion is 1,000,000 million. And you're bitching and screaming about 1 million. What about the other 999,999 other million? Oh, we don't know what $1 trillion is. We know that we play the lottery, we get $1 million, and we don't think that you never learned math. You're complaining about the wrong thing. So in 2009, they invented a $2 trillion stimulus package. Who gets to pay for that? Isn't your Congress wonderful? They just keep inventing reasons for you to go to work. Now, in 2011, we're supposed to have a $3.69 trillion budget. As if anything with 12 zeros to the left of the decimal point can be called a budget. Is that how much Congress is going to spend? No, because even with a $3.6 trillion budget, there is still a deficit of $1 trillion. It's $1 trillion that they're going to spend. They don't even know how to pay for it. But don't worry, your people in Congress are bragging that they've reduced the deficit by $200 billion. Let's all applaud Congress for the great job that they are doing, reducing the debt that you have to pay for. So, the problem with Americans is they're getting ripped off because nobody ever taught them big numbers. Million, billion, trillion, oh, those all sound alike. Million has 6 zeros after it. It's 1 times 10 to the 6th. A billion is 1,000 million, or 1 times 10 to the 9th. A trillion is a million million, 1 times 10 to the 12th. We used to call these astronomical numbers. Now we just call them economic numbers because those are much bigger. So, but people cannot get their mind around a million. What is a million? So let's talk about seconds. Everybody knows what a second is, right? Tick, 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 tick. 1 million seconds is 11 and a half days. In seconds. Ding, 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 ding. Okay? 1,000 of those would be a billion seconds, or 3.1 years. For 31.1 years for a billion seconds. So that means that a trillion seconds is 31,000 years. For seconds. Get an idea how many a trillion is? Let's try something else. How about inches? A million inches, 15.7 miles. How many people want to walk a million inches? That's a long way. A billion inches is 15,000 miles, 3/4 of the way around the Earth, at the equator. A trillion, everybody knows what an inch is, right? We're all talking the same thing? An inch? A trillion inches is 635 times around the equator. And your government is just inventing $1 trillion this, $2 trillion that, and we sit there watching the news at 9 o'clock, like, whoa, dear, oh, I got another $1 trillion. Oh, that's nice, sweetheart. And you're not screaming at the television yet? Let's do sugar cubes. 1 million sugar cubes is just over a 2-foot square.
You're preaching to the choir.
Am I? 1 billion sugar cubes is 20 feet cube, and 1 trillion sugar cubes is a cube 208 feet on a side. And sugar cubes, we're talking 1/4-inch sugar cubes, 1 or 2 in your cup of coffee, right? 208 feet, that's 17 stories tall for 1 trillion sugar cubes. So, all right, let's talk about real money. The deficit, the $1 trillion deficit, the stuff they're spending over the budget, will cost every man, woman, and child in the United States $3,333. You're going to go home tonight and get, this kind of money from your 12-year-old? Because they kind of owe it. The $14 trillion debt, that's $47,000 a person, and all this Medicare and Medicaid that everybody's, waiting on. I mean, all of the elderly people are just waiting to cash your Social Security check. Your grandchildren are going to have to pay $186,000 per person. When a baby is born at the hospital, hasn't even gone home yet, is already in debt about $1/8 Now, this poster I found says that today's economic crisis is just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to get worse because of interest. So, all right, really, seriously, what should we do about the problem? The first step is to stop being in denial. Stop telling yourself the United States is the greatest country in the world and they would never let it happen here. Okay? Somebody comes up to you and tells you that your spouse is being unfaithful. You go, oh my gosh, it's so terrible? No, the first thing you say is, no, not my relationship. Oh my God, we're like Romeo and Juliet. And you start calling the person telling you a liar. You're in denial. Because you really don't want to know that is true. So stop being in denial. Your first thing is to protect your family, yourself and your family. you need to have at least 12 to 18 month supply of food. On your list, I have 3 different websites that you can go to purchase this food, either freeze-dried. The first one, I forgot what it was, but they ship you a pallet. It's really convenient. Next thing that you need to do is to convert all of your liquid assets to gold and silver, or some kind of commodity. You go, well, could I just do like 10% of my 401k? Well, yeah. I mean, you could only put the money that you want to save into gold and silver. only transfer the money that you still want to have after the economic collapse. My parents taught us that, we should only floss the teeth we want to keep. Okay? There are 2 references there. You call my buddy down in Pensacola, Florida, Tim Fry, mention my name, and he will set you up and give you all the different options, and you can have a wonderful package arrive in the mail as well. You need to have guns and ammunition. Nobody wants to talk about it, but you're not going to keep the food, you're not going to keep the gold and silver unless you can physically protect it. Nobody wants to talk about this because, oh my gosh, that's kind of like icky. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody either. I also don't want to starve to death. So there are 2 rules. Don't hurt me, don't take my stuff. Those are the only 2 rules. Okay? And you need to have guns and ammunition to back that up. You need to build a strong sense of community. I applaud this group because you're doing that. You are interacting with other people. These people next to you are the ones that you're going to have to rely on because you know them and you can trust them. None of us can all do it by ourselves. But we need to have more. I mean, this auditorium should be like filled wall, standing room only. So we need to start getting involved and get others involved too. It's wonderful that you come to these meetings. But if you're not bringing people that haven't been to meetings yet, then you're not going to grow. And you're really not going to accomplish anything. So anyway, I apologize for being the bearer of bad news. I don't like to be the one telling you the future is not bright and rosy. I want to thank you for your kind attention. I've written a book on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights called Good to be King. They're available at the back of the room. And I'm willing to take questions.
Is there a copy of that presentation available from this?
It's not. It's not available. I mean, I just invented it for this presentation, and I'm going to see if I can't sell it around and make a couple dollars on it.
Actually, it is available on the internet.
It's what?
It actually is available on the internet. It's called www.endofamerica.
Not this particular
No,
presentation.
but it's very similar.
Yeah. And the 3 YouTube videos that Kirk McKenzie does, again, there's a lot of this information out there, but nobody wants to get it because, well, it's like such bad news.
What happened right now if they got rid of the first of all, going to be done?
Well, the question is, what would happen if we got rid of the Federal Reserve, and could it be done? The answer is yes, it could be done. There is a clause in the Federal Reserve Act that allows Congress to eliminate the Federal Reserve. So what we need are, 231 people in Congress with the intestinal fortitude to do that. The problem is the Federal Reserve is printing money and loaning Congress as much money as they want. So, okay, the Federal Reserve is bad because they're printing the money, but Congress is just as guilty because they're asking for it and they're expecting you to pay for it. So, unless we can, do more than just make nasty phone calls and nasty letters to our representatives, I want to get my representative by the lapels. And when I am forehead to forehead and I explain that he's guilty of treason and is going to go to jail, then we might start to get a little bit of significant action.
What do we do in place of that?
What do we do in place of that? Continue to use worthless monopoly money and continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper into debt.
What do we do? If we take the
Well, we don't need a plan. You know, if I get rid of a disease, what do you want me to replace it with? A different disease?
We have to do something with our money, we have to base it on gold.
We have invented barter in second grade. It may be a little bit sloppy to trade peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for a while, but there's still plenty of gold and silver out there. Any kind of commodity will work. Okay? And there's no way to do it without disruption. Okay? If you have a heart problem, they take you to the hospital. Okay, we're going to save your life, but we're going to have to cut you open to do it.
Okay, $5 silver. Where do you put it? Where the government won't take it?
Well, I have guns. The government's not taking anything from me. Don't say, I was trying to be polite because I was talking in public. But it's really, don't hurt me, don't take my stuff, or I'll shoot and kill you. That's so antisocial. But, I mean, you get the idea. Don't hurt me, don't take my stuff. Well, I'm wearing a badge. Okay, I won't shoot there. The government's job is to protect my life, my liberty, and my private property. They don't have the authority to come and take my property. Is the government big enough and powerful enough? Yeah. Am I going to die? Probably. But I'm not going to die alone.
I thought during Roosevelt, when the dog was taken.
What's that?
During Roosevelt, adheres.
Right.
I thought some dog was taken.
Well, Roosevelt passed House Joint Resolution 192 that said, turn in your gold. And people did. It's like, why? How is the economy going to be better if you give Roosevelt your gold? It's like, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to announce there's been a pickpocket in the area, and this guy's really, really good. So as a public service, I'm willing to hold their money. So everybody just pass their money towards the front, and I will hold it for you. Nobody's going to play that game? Why would you give the government your gold? How stupid can you possibly be?
You talk about the fractional reserve.
Yes.
And the government tracks different money supply, one, two, three. They actually count how they put counterfeit money. A few years ago, they stopped importing money.
Right.
Are you familiar with that?
I am.
So can you explain why did they do that?
The question is, they want me to explain why the Federal Reserve stopped publishing the value of M3. Now, M3 is a measure or an estimate of how much paper money is floating around. Okay? And you need to know that when you are gambling in the stock market. Let me try to put it in a different context. You come over to my house and we're playing poker. What's the first question you're going to ask? How much are the poker chips worth? You know, penny, nickel, dime? Nickel, dime, quarter? Maybe $1, $5, $10, huh? We're not going to drink beer tonight because we're dealing with real money. What would happen if I kept adding poker chips to the table? Okay, and before we deal, I'm going to give you a new value. You're going to have your little calculator there. Okay, so now the poker chips are 7.5, 22, and 99. Right? You're going to have that calculator there to know how much value you have in front of you. When you play the stock market, that's what's happening. The Federal Reserve is constantly printing more money, putting more money or more poker chips on the table. And so you need to know how much, and they used to publish that number, which was called M3. They stopped publishing M3. Why? Because they were inflating the money. And we were starting to go, well, look, you got 5%, 8%, 10% inflation because the government keeps printing money. If you and I are in the car, and you're sitting in the passenger seat, and I'm going 50, 60, 80, 90, 105 miles an hour, and you're looking over at the speedometer going, wow, aren't you going a little bit fast? I go, no problem. And I put a little sticker over the speedometer. Are you going to be able to sit back quietly and relax because you can't see the speedometer? Did I cover up the speedometer because I'm going to start going slower? No, I covered up the speedometer because now I'm kicking in the afterburners and the nitrous oxide. We're going to be going 150 miles an hour, and I don't want you to know. The Federal Reserve has been doubling our money supply about every 4 years since 2000. So we've now got 6 times as much money in circulation as we did back in 2000, which is why your gas prices are going up about 10 cents a week. That's why when you go to the grocery store and you buy $120 worth of groceries, it fits into one of the small baskets. And you think it's because, oh my God, I'm not working hard enough. I used to be able to feed my family, but all I got were some Pringles. It's not your fault. I mean, that's not what's causing inflation. It is your fault because you never learned big numbers, you never learned about the Federal Reserve, and you didn't revolt back in 1913 when the Federal Reserve started counterfeiting our money. So sooner or later, the economy is going to collapse. At this point in time, it is no chance in saving. You got to save yourself, you got to have food, you got to have whatever is going to be money. Gold and silver have been money for over 6,000 years. I'm betting on gold.